Hello, everyone, and welcome to Her Right Conversation with Dr. Christine Kozachuk. Today we have our speaker, which is Dr. Ijeoma. She will be speaking on her right and health inequity. Dr. Ezinne is the founder of Face of Joy International Charity in Southeast London, which works in community to support the less privileged, homeless, elderly, and young people. She continues to make a difference in the world as she is passionate to encourage and motivate lives to be the best God has created them to be. Dr. Ezinne has worked as an evangelist and in medical missionary, supporting people by teaching and preaching the gospel and raising health awareness in deprived areas of the world, such as Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, India, Philippines, Nigeria, Benin Republic, United States, Ukraine. Dr. Ezinne is a nurse practitioner. She has in her nursing career worked with the elderly, drug and alcohol abuse, dementia and Alzheimer's disease, a career that has enabled her through her faith become an interface to create health awareness within faith groups and has succeeded in giving information on how to connect spiritually, looking after physical and mental health. Welcome, Dr. Ezinne. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very well. I send you all greetings from London. I hope you all are doing well. It's quite sunny over here.
Wow, thank you so much. So we are going to go ahead and let you give us your speech on her right and in health and health inequity.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Christine, for such an amazing opportunity. I would like to welcome everybody that is watching us, those that are watching from London, from Uganda, from Kenya, from all over the world. We want to say thank you, welcome everybody. Please share this broadcast. If you go to Dr. Christine's page, you can share it to your friends, your groups, and let people come on board, because what we're going to share today is a very important information that everybody needs to have concerning her right and health inequity. So without much ado, as many of you know, I've been in the health field for over 14 years. I'm currently concluding my MSc in Global Public Health. So I've worked extensively in mental health and within the mental health part of nursing, where I've supported people with different kinds of ailments like psychosis. I'm also trained in CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy. And more, when we talk about her right, it's very important for us to know that women need to be understood. Women need to be supported. Women need to be aware of who they are and what provisions that are made available for them to be able to thrive in a world where there is so much inequality. Putting women and girls at the center of economy will fundamentally drive a better and more sustainable development. In any economy where women and girls are being empowered, you tend to see that economy thrives, that economy expands, and that economy becomes very fruitful. However, there are many things that can hamper or stop that. Today, we're going to look at the World Health Organization and development goals. And one of the goals, that is the goal number 5, says that it is important that we achieve gender equality and empower all women and all girls. It's very important that we note those two words, all women and all girls. And I'm so grateful for Dr. Kozachuk, because every girl win encapsulates this vision of the World Health Organization, which is making sure that we do not stop our campaign, we do not stop what we are doing until every woman is empowered, until there is gender equality in our society. Women naturally live longer than men, but spend fewer years in good health. And that's something we need to understand. Yes, they say women live longer, but how many of those years they live are in good health? And this applies to you and I. When you look at the stretch of your life, how many of the years you are living are in good health? Also, we look at things like gender pay, the pay gap. We see that 16.93% and 38% respectively. There is such a great difference between what men are paid and what women are paid, coupled with the fact that women are producers, they are caregivers, and in addition to all that role, they still come into the society to work. And in the process of working in the society, they are still underpaid. And things like that are things that need to change. And how can it change? You and I are the instruments, the catalysts that would bring about that change and let women have their right. Also, we see that older women in particular are at risk of poverty and social exclusion. And this tends to create barriers to health services. When people are underpaid, when people, due to their age, are not being allowed to have free access to health care, it tends to lead to a poorer economy because you have people with poor health. So when we talk about gender equality, we're looking at, it's not just a fundamental human right. It is also a necessary foundation for a peaceful and a sustainable world. This is according to the World Health Organization. You see, there has been so much progress over the last decade. More girls are going to school. Fewer girls are being forced into early marriages. These are progresses that has taken place over the years. And we tend to see that there are more women who are being seen in the places of leadership, and laws are being enforced to advance the right of a woman. However, there is still many challenges that are ahead of us. And that is why we're looking at her rights and health inequity. So we see that women and girls between the ages of 15 and 49, they tend to report sexual and physical abuse, and this needs to be addressed. We see that over the time, especially in this time of the pandemic, there has been a rise in domestic violence. So there are two major places I'm going to talk about health inequity. We're going to be looking at domestic violence and what we can do about it. We're going to look at maternal health in low-income countries and middle-income countries. So we see that the effect of COVID pandemic could has made gender equality and women's rights, in as much as we were making progress in the past. The COVID-19 has brought has led to a lot of, as will I say, a step of retrogression backwards. And that is why we need to start our campaign again. We need to support women. We need to open up more NGOs and charities who support the rights of a woman. Women play a disproportionate role in responding to the virus. We've seen that, including frontline health workers and carers at home. A lot of, if you look at the rate of those who COVID-19 affected immensely, sorry, because every girl wing encapsulates this vision of, okay, we're having a repeat. I hope there's no feedback you're getting from what I'm saying. Yes, so we see that there is so much inequity in terms of frontline workers, carers at home. Women continue to do a lot of unpaid care work, and this has led to a lot of women being financially unable to carry out their roles and duties within the society, and this in turn affects the health. We've seen that when it comes to healthcare is not just about having a physical disease. We've seen that social issues, mental health issues, these things come out to show forth in physical illnesses. So if the society is able to create facilities and access for women and children, we will have a people with a better optimum health. I also in looking through violence against women within this within this pandemic, I did do a study on how domestic violence increased during the pandemic. I'm going to go that in detail as we go forward. So we also look at the gender inequality index, and this is measured by the reproductive health. Women are the ones who give birth to children. And over the years, we see in low income countries and high income and middle income countries that the high rate of mortality in maternal death has been increasing. Unlike in developed world like Europe, America, and the United Kingdom, we see that the rate is very, very low. But we see things like preeclampsia, we see things like infection. These are highly on the increase. Something as little as antibiotics, which could help a mother at the point of delivery, is many times not available. So when we look at a lot of women who are dying in the process of giving birth to children, this is something that is really walking around the low income countries. I put down here that there are a few courses of inequality. We see that things like, let's look at uneven access to education. Around the world, women still have less access to education than men. One quarter of young women between the ages of 15 and 24 do not finish primary school. This group make up 58% of the people not completing basic education. Of all the illiterate people in the world, 2/3 are women. When girls are not educated on the same level as boys, it has a huge effect on the future and the kinds of the opportunities they get. There's also lack of employment equality, which is what I've said earlier. I think it's only 6 countries in the world give women same legal work rights as men. In fact, most economies give women only 3/4 of the rights that men are given. You know, studies have shown that if employment becomes more equal, it does have a domino effect on health, on gender equality. So we see that when a woman asks for, probably she has childcare issues or she's asking for a pay rise, a man will be better giving those kind of facility than a woman. And we see that when it comes to board of directors, when it comes to people at the helm of affairs, you will see more men sitting on the table more than women. And I keep saying it, that it's no longer fashionable for women, for you to be the only woman on the table in the midst of men. As women, it's very important that we take up other women with us as we go along the way. We look at lack of legal protection. In many countries, like low income countries, you see a lot of women, when it comes to protection in a court, they have no rights. Things like rape cases go under the carpet. First of all, women have to deal with the stigma of being abused and even coming out to say, I was abused. And these are things that are affecting especially low and middle income countries, whereby the legal system does not favor the woman. When a woman gets sexually assaulted, the blame is put on the woman, that she put herself in that place of vulnerability. So the woman's ability to thrive in freedom is compromised. So we see that many many countries lack any policy in place. They lack judicial laws in place in things like harassment at workplace, harassment in the public, and harassment at school. We hear cases of young girls being sexually assaulted, sexually molested, or sexually intimidated in universities just to go through their education. They are being told that if they are not ready to do whatever the lecturer wants them to do, they're unable to graduate. So we see that despite having the knowledge to be able to be educated, these are barriers that stop women from being able to achieve those goals. And this has led to the economy having fewer women who are educated. So you see many young girls, they drop out of school because they look at the whole bureaucracy that is involved and they can't be bothered. So these are awareness we need to bring in, whereby the legal protection for women is available and the financial support for these women is also available. I know that many NGOs are working to support women in terms of providing free legal aid. But when we look at the population growth in low income countries and middle income countries, we see that the resources many times are not enough to support women in being able to be represented in the law court. We also see something that is very major that leads to a lot of health inequity, which is poor medical care. You see, there is limited access to contraception. A lot of young girls who I know that there's a lot of teaching on sexual abstinence, sexual health, yet there is little teaching on the use of contraception, because in many, like in low income countries and middle income countries, sometimes contraception is being frowned upon, and women all over such countries receive lower medical care. You see a woman, maybe all the family can afford is maybe 2, 3 children, but because of poor contraception, they end up having 7, 8, 9 children, and that keeps them below the poverty line. And you see that a woman with 8, 9 children, there is no way she would be able to contribute significantly into the economy, because she's already a caregiver at home, having a lot of children to look after. So when we look at limited access to contraception, this is something that needs to be taught even within the faith groups, that women need to protect themselves and women need to understand the need for them to have the right to have a child at when they desire. It's very important that women are not being coerced, they are not being forced, they are not being told that because you have just girls and you don't have a son, you have to keep getting pregnant until you have a son. You know, sometimes in Africa, there's this stigma about a woman that has just girls. These are some of the stigmas that make women constantly trying to get pregnant, constantly trying to have a son, because the society has put how do I put it? I'm looking for the right word to use. That a lady once said to me that when she had her son, her in-laws were extremely excited. But the minute she had her daughter, her mother-in-law said, what you have is called negative. So having a son is positive. Having a girl is negative. And sometimes you hear when a woman has had like 3, 4 girls and maybe she has the fourth is a girl, and they ask people, what does she have? Another girl. So it's like a stigma that having a girl has a negative connotation attached to it. And this is being sunk into the ears of children. And sometimes you see the stigma of the woman with girls amongst other people that have boys. Why am I bringing this up? You and I are the change catalyst. You and I are the people that are in the society. A society cannot change without the people within it. Behavioral change stems from information, through information, assimilation, and through assimilation, action. So you and I have that responsibility to support people, to raise this kind of awareness within our groups, whether it is in your religious group, whatever that works for the society where you are. You know, even I tell pastors who are in low income countries to hold talks like, what is the difference between a boy and a girl? Is there a difference? And you bring up all those things because we need to change the mindset of the men and the mindset of the women. So these are very important things that we need to pass down to the grassroots level so that people can understand that it is every child, it matters. Every child has a right, and more especially, the girl child has a right to live, a right to education, a right to choose, and a right to say yes, and a right to say no. Also, we look at lack of religious freedom. That has been an age-old barrier that we've seen in a long time that has always affected women, where women do not have the right to choose the kind of religion they want to follow, whether they choose not to have a religion at all or they choose to have a religion. I believe that every woman has that right. When religious freedom is attacked, women suffer the most. According to the World Economic Forum, when extremist ideologies come into a community and restrict religious freedom, gender inequality gets worse. That has been fully established. Definitely, I'm a Christian, but I welcome every religion. I don't care what your religion is. What I care is you have a right to be. You have a right to choose. You have a right to become. You have a right to say no to my ideas. And I am obliged to respect that choice that you have. My job is to show an example. If my lifestyle is something that you want to emulate, that's excellent. But I dare not, considering that every human being has a right, put my extreme or my own belief on the heart and the minds of people and force them and or like or hate them or provide or open access or deny them access because they are not part of what I believe in. And I believe that if communities begin to have that mindset, we would see a more sustainable economy. We would see the World Health Organization sustainable developmental goal 5, whereby the rights of every woman, girl, child is being respected. We've seen political representation. Every time you see a woman, like we saw in United States, when we had the first lady vice president, there was a great uproar because it's not something we see more often. We are driving into an economy, into a system, into a society where it is normal to see first ladies, to see you and I become those people who are decision makers, who are at the helm of affairs, holding important position and making decisions concerning the world that we live in. Women contribute so much into the world. Women are caregivers, women are producers, women are responsible for every 6 billion people you see on earth. They are the ones that carry from pregnancy to full term and causes the world to thrive. And it's very important that our role is not being ignored or being sidelined or being underrepresented. We cannot talk about inequity, even in health, without talking about racism. Racism is so real. Racism, it's part of gender inequality, but all the same, you and I must realize that everyone is born free, equal, irrespective of your color, your race, your gender, whoever you are. Racism needs to stop worldwide. We must learn to always be active reflectors. One of the things I teach, and I let people know that if you want to be consciously somebody who is not racist, you must learn active reflection. Active reflection means that for every step you take, you are rethinking, you are reminiscing on the action you're taking. When you're a person that actively reflects on every decision you make, you will see that you'll be someone who will be very calculated. You hardly get angry, you hardly react, become a reactive person. And also, I've spoken about that earlier, the minds of people, how people see things, how people judge things. It's very important that our mindset is based on seeing women as being very important aspects of the world. I remember I spoke about the inequality index, and I said that when we look at domestic violence towards women, and I'm going to look at maternal mortality rate. Globally, 736 million women have been subject to domestic violence. Worldwide, this is what is being recorded. Because when we understand, when it comes to women, domestic violence is one of the leading causes of ill health in women following the mental health illness, which is majorly on depression and anxiety. And these are things that strive out of domestic violence, maybe, or even violence towards women. When women are being threatened, it tends to affect them psychologically, emotionally. Their health is also being affected. So many times you see a woman having arthritis, you see a woman having ulcers, you see a woman having panic attack, you see a woman weighed down by depression. Go trace it back. There is an aspect of domestic violence playing somewhere. It could be verbal, it could be emotional, it's not, many times we talk about domestic violence, our mind runs to the physical aspect of domestic violence, but there are very subtle ways that domestic violence affects women and in turn affects their health. Withholding love, withholding care, withholding finances, being difficult. These things tend to affect women. I was listening to a lady, and we were at work, and she took off her hair and said, I have alopecia, and this alopecia is stress related, and it's out of domestic violence, which led her to now have an immunodeficiency. And from there, she had kidney failures. Her kidneys packed up. She lost 3 of her properties and lost over 70,000 pounds. So look at what one woman had to go through in the process of divorce. So many times when you see some illnesses, it is like a domino effect. That is why as women, it's very important that you look after your health. Your health is very important to you because your life is important to the society. Your being alive is important to your society, first of all, to your family, to your household. So it's very important that in spite of what it looks like you are going through, I don't know why I need to say this, but I feel it's very important to speak to a woman out there that your health and how you look after it determines the years of life of good health that you have. Many women are living, but they are not living in good health. They are not I don't know why I didn't bring up the definition of health according to the World Health Organization, whereby you look at health in a holistic manner. So let's continue. And an estimate of 275 million children have been exposed to violence at home, according to the United Nations published data. 1 in 3 women have experienced some form of physical and psychological violence. Domestic violence is described as a pattern of abuse and coercive behavior, for example, hitting, slapping, name calling, humiliating behavior between the abuser and its victim, who normally they know each other. That is according to the World Health Organization. This has now become a global problem because women are more at risk, and being that they are the majority of caregiver, this violation impacts on one of the sustainable goals of health on women and maternal health, which is the right of women and their children to health. A child's desire is to live in a safe environment with food and shelter. And where domestic violence takes place, this right is being compromised. 736 million women that I'm talking about is what is being reported. There is so much that is being underreported that is not even being reported, either due to stigma, either due to what we people say, either due to not knowing where to run to, either due to no financial empowerment. Many women are still living with their abuser. And what happens with the most painful part of this is that it tends to affect children. One of the things I'm trying to bring out today in this health inequity and the right of a woman is, for every woman who is being empowered, who is being allowed to live a life of freedom, you are raising up a healthy generation of children. So whatever affects the woman affects the children. Furthermore, we see that the impact on children, on women and children, is devastating. This has led to increased rate of depression, unplanned pregnancy, a lot of STIs, HIV, anxiety disorder is higher in women and children who have been exposed to domestic violence compared to those who have not been. And when you look at this kind of illnesses, they come as a result of the effect of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a serious cause of ill health, dysfunction, and death among women of reproductive ages. The COVID-19 pandemic led to an increase in the risk of violence as women were isolated with their perpetrators due to the movement restriction, social isolation, and lack of financial power. Helplines experienced seven-fold calls. Low-income countries such as Lebanon had 3 times more calls than before. In countries like China, they had triple calls to helpline, and you would be surprised to learn that search engines like Google experience the highest level of people seeking help from domestic violence. Throughout this pandemic, the search engines have never experienced the kind of high level of people searching for help for domestic violence. And this is because they are in their homes with the perpetrator. That is why the World Health Organization added prevention and response to violence against women to the COVID-19 response plan as a result of what is going on. Children exposed to domestic violence experience psychological stress, and this tends to impact on cognitive development, behavior problems. You see children having insomnia, fear, speech problem, depression, and later in life, you begin to see this same children expressing criminal behavior, teen pregnancy, substance misuse, social disconnect, and aggressive behavior, and from poor modeling from home environment. So every time, I don't know who is watching this, you might be a man that is a perpetrator, you might be a woman who is going through domestic violence. This is a global pandemic. Domestic violence is a global pandemic. It's not just about you. Lives are being lost. children, we are raising up dysfunctional children, and it needs to stop in the society. So I don't just talk about problems without coming up with a solution. It's very important that as we talk about issues, we look at what can we do. So to address these issues, mothers and children should be better protected. When a girl grows up in a home where she sees her father beating up her mother, she feels that beating up a woman is normal. She feels that being unattended. I don't know if you've heard some girls say things like, I like men that are very tough. I like men that are not sissies. These are things society has taught them, that when a man shows you love, is attentive to you, he's caring, oh no, that's not the kind of man I want. And this is a growing scenario with our teenage girls, whereby they want to go for the man that beats them, the man that is promiscuous, because these are learned behavior. You see, there was a time I worked in a certain facility, and I was listening, I was spending time with this patient, and he said to me, my mom is so stupid. She went back to the man who abused her and ended up having my younger brother 5 years later. And I said to him, probably she was still in love with him. She said, no, she has no brains. She has no brains. You do not go back to people who hurt you. You do not go back to people who abuse you. I saw that man beat my mother. I saw that man kick my mother. I saw that man. These were the things he was recalling. And guess what this young boy said? He said, thank God he's dead. He was so hateful. Number one, for the fact that the mother stayed in an abusive relationship. Number two, for the fact that the mother did not choose her right to walk away from abuse and raise up young boys in a place that is safe. And this is an unresolved trauma for this young boy. This is one of many stories we hear every day where people have hidden trauma and anger that leads to mental health issues. And this is very important for us to know that we as a society must learn conflict resolution. We must learn to agree to disagree, and we must learn to disagree respectfully. Every form of domestic violence comes from somebody trying to usurp their authority, their ways upon the life of somebody else. How do we change this? Through the way we behave, through the way we model our lives at our children, and how we are raising the next generation, and how we are making them become more aware. I was mentoring a very young girl. She was like at the age of 12, and she came to me when we had our facility somewhere here in London, and she was sharing some things about her friends. And as she was saying things, I could see a bit of anger in her. And I said to her in a subtle voice, are you jealous? And she looked at me and she said, I think so. So I had to teach her how to learn to appreciate people who are also doing well. And she was so young. And a few days later, she came back to me and said, thank you. No one has ever been able to make me reflect. I was actually jealous of my friends. I was jealous of their achievement. And I had to teach her how to appreciate others. Think about many adults who have carried this kind of trait into the society, where they cannot praise other people, where they cannot support other women. All these things stems from childhood, where we do not teach people how to love others. We see it in the religious circle. We don't celebrate those that are doing well in ministry. We don't celebrate those that are doing well academically. We don't celebrate those that are enjoying their marriage. We don't celebrate those whose children are doing extremely well until you are doing well. We have to come and raise a society. You may not be married, you may be a single parent, but you must be able to celebrate those who are happily married, because a happy marriage is a happy society, and that is a strong foundation for a community. Why am I bringing these? These are things that affect people's health. Many people are going through a lot of health issues because they have not learned to manage their emotions, their emotional health properly. So one of the things we can do is that we need to protect mothers and children, women better. Adults working with children, for example, teachers, social workers, parents, should be trained and skilled to recognize early signs of children and adults who are exposed to domestic violence and refer to appropriate services. We should be able to have more shelter homes that should be readily accessible to help victims. Many low income countries and middle income countries, one of the challenges is that there has not been enough shelter homes to help people walk away from abuse. Also, learn to refer mothers to appropriate services. At that point, children are being picked up and they are able to be supported. Research has shown that providing intervention for abused mothers always benefits the children. Also, government and public health should be speaking out on the impact of violence at home on women. Global gender tracking is very important, and I believe that the government needs to continue to use that to improve services for survivors of of domestic violence. Also, there should be policies and legislation in place to make sure that domestic violence, there is a high criminal offense attached to it. Because when we make it as a punishable crime and tougher measures are put in place, perpetrators understand that you do not abuse a woman and get away with it. It is not your right to abuse a woman. Also, we see things like I'm someone that I'm big on preventative strategies. There should be preventative strategies to create awareness. Children need to know that it is not their fault and learn better ways to settle conflict. Like I'm so grateful for Dr. Kozachuk for putting up this program, because what are we doing? We are also following what the government is saying by raising this awareness. This awareness needs to go far and wide so that the rights of a woman is being supported. Also, we need to continue to stop child bride. Early marriages of women tend to increase the risk of domestic violence, because when girls marry early, they tend to interrupt their studies and it leads to social isolation. Also, government needs to fund more NGOs, and society needs to support financially NGOs, charities in areas of women and children. And also the police. You see, many times you see a lot of cases that are being dropped is because the police are not financially empowered to be able to do this. Another where we also see that the society thinks about domestic violence and why women continue to be in a very disproportionate advantage is because the healthcare workers, the investigators, are not financially empowered to help. I remember a lady called me from Nigeria, and she reported the husband to the police because he was beating her up. And when they got to the police station, they told them to go home and settle the matter, that it is a family affair, that they don't want to get involved. So we see this over and over again, that things as serious as this that ends up affecting the health and the lifespan of women are being put under the carpet as if it is 1 + 1 is equals to 2. And we also see constantly this same behavior. We see it even within the religious sector, whereby when people bring issues concerning relationship, marriage, and what they are going through, we end up seeing them going back to the abuser, and the cycle of abuse starts again, starting with the nice phase, and then the abuse gets even worse until either the woman passes away or something drastic happens. Something very important I need to speak about before I begin to take questions is about maternal death. The mortality rate of women of maternal aging. This is very important, and it's very important for us to raise that awareness. Maternal death is described as the death of a woman or within 42 days of termination of pregnancy from any cause related or aggravated by pregnancy, but not from accidental or incidental causes. This is by the World Health Organization 2019. Anything that leads to a woman dying from the moment she's pregnant until 42 days after is described as maternal death. There are three major causes of maternal death, especially in low-income countries. The first and the major one is hemorrhage. This is where excessive bleeding after a woman has given birth. The uterus refuses to contract and expel the placenta. Hence, the blood vessel bleeds uncontrollably, creating a hemorrhage. And where there is no blood transfusion, the mother dies of blood loss. You see that there are some religions that tell women you don't take another blood. A lot of women have lost their lives. Some hospitals in low-income countries do not have blood. And this has led to a lot of women dying. Number two, infection. This can occur at any stage while a woman is pregnant. For example, we have UTIs, which in turn turns to a sepsis, which affects the blood, and it is very, very deadly. You see that poor sanitization as well in very low income country where the pregnant woman delivers a baby, she can get infected, thereby increasing the MMR. And where there is no antibiotics to treat the woman, she can die. As little as antibiotics can extend the life of a woman within the reproductive age. High blood pressure preeclampsia. We've seen high blood pressure claim a lot of lives. I have been to several countries, including Rwanda, Benin Republic, Kenya, Uganda, India. And one of the things I do on my mission journey is that I hold medical camps in all the different districts I visit. And constantly, while we are doing screening through people, a lot of people were having high blood pressure, things like 212 over 132, very high blood pressure, risk of stroke, and basic facilities like high blood pressure machines are not available. During the pandemic, I was in Liberia. A whole teaching hospital had no blood pressure machine. Fortunately, I went with 10 and they were so grateful. The maternity unit, people were able to know their blood pressure. They were actually using a broken down blood pressure machine, and this is very common in low income countries whereby there is inadequate health care. So it's very important that we learn and know how to care for women within maternal age. Well, how can we address this? Number one, there should be provision and access to antenatal care. Antenatal care is the care provided by skilled health professionals to pregnant women to ensure that the best health for both mother and baby during pregnancy. This will help reduce the financial burden on the pregnant woman, especially in low-income countries who have reduced financial ability, and as a result of pregnancy and poor maternity leave legislation. We see like here in United Kingdom, when you're pregnant, there is support for you. But I know that in low income and middle income countries, they have little or no provision like that. Because when you're pregnant, you can't work and you are not being provided with quite a lot of things that you need. Things like counseling, healthy eating advice for pregnant women. I know some of us that have joined from low income and middle income countries. It's very important that things like counseling are being brought in place in all the areas that you are able to teach women. We don't just leave these things to the government. The government can do their own part, but many of us have influence in our sphere of society. We need to use that, our influence, to help our communities. Number three, ensure that they have at least 8 contacts with midwives and health professionals. So when you see a pregnant woman, you find out, have you seen a health professional? Questions like this are very important. Hospitals need to be equipped with medical supplies. I went to Rwanda, I think it was in one of the years, we packed a truckload of medical supplies from United States. We gave out so many different things with lice treatment, medical maternity beds, so many things we equipped hospitals with. Some of us are financially able in developed countries. Come together, put your friends together and do things like this for low income countries. Also very important, vaccination for pregnant women, things like tetanus vaccination. These things can stop maternal death and supervised delivery. That is so important. Many times people who are not skilled are the ones that are having these children for people from low income country. There is so much we can say about health inequity and women's rights, but more importantly, I want you and I to know that every woman who knows her right, whose right is being encouraged in the society, thrives and leads to a society that is healthy, leads to raising up children who are healthy, and leads to having an economy that thrives beyond generation. So it's very important more than ever that you and I, those of you listening right now, that we begin to work together, working with the United Nations, working with the World Health Organization, working at grassroots levels, working with charities that empower women, and attend conferences and find out ways that you and I can improve the right of a woman and allow every woman to be the best they can be, because it is their right to life, it is their right to health, and it is their right to freedom. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for listening to me, and thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Christine.
Wow, that was great, Dr. Ezinne. And we have, I want to thank the listeners and those that are here today. We have Caroline Opente, Dr. Caroline Opente, which is our International Every Girl Wins South Africa. We have my husband, which is my biggest cheerleader. We have Sir Clyde Rivers, Fidelia. We have quite a few on Facebook Live, but we also have quite a few on our Zoom right now. We have my assistant Damaris from Kenya. We have Joanna, Dr. Eberry, which is our Sweden International Representative, Gia, which I know is for Suriname, and Pastor Praise.
She's from Kenya. Pastor Praise is from Kenya. She's my sister.
Kenya. Okay, Kenya. But they have some questions for you. Dr. Eberry asked, please, how can you collaborate to stem this tide of many women wanting to have children late via IVF when they can readily adopt? I have someone who wants to get pregnant at 46, and I asked she wouldn't adopt instead. She got angry and said, I don't have faith. She has 2 children, a boy and a girl. And then we have another question from Gia after you answer that.
Okay. There's a growing trend for people wanting to have IVF and have their children. There's also, I believe that when it comes to adoption, there's the awareness is less. I always say that information brings about knowledge, and knowledge leads to assimilation. Like in Africa, people think that having your own child is the most important achievement you can have when you struggle with having a child. And when a woman, you tell her that you can adopt. I've seen many women who adopted first. And because they, after adoption and started raising a child that wasn't their own, what happened was that they got pregnant naturally and had their own children. And sometimes it depends on knowledge. I believe that if knowledge is being expressed properly to somebody, and they see and there are people they can see who have adopted children, and these children are thriving. I know that I've got 3 children of my own, but I know that I'm going to adopt from all over the world. I love kids. I love to raise them. And I believe that for such a person, they just need more counseling, because if they want to go through the IVF route and they can, all well and good for them. It's their choice. If they also if they see adoption in a negative way. But I want to find out, is it that the lady that is 46 sees that you telling her that she should rather adopt than go through IVF. She's seeing it like you are being, and you are that you are maybe that you don't think that at her age, at 46, she deserves to have a child. You know, I want to be sure about that, Dr. Barry. You can unmute.
Dr. Berry, you can unmute and ask the question.
Hey, sorry, I am in a position not to show myself.
Oh, that's okay.
I joined from somewhere where I was. Yeah, it's not as if I don't think the person is capable of having a child. People have decided to have children at 60, but I know that it comes with more risk having children at a later age, and we are talking about women's health. The person could actually successfully have that child, but then it triggers something else that starts the decline in health. And that's my concern. But I think each time I try to talk about it, I think this person had a miscarriage somewhere some time ago. And I said, you should stop doing this because it's affecting your health. Things are getting out of you, and you already have 2 children. And I don't see the point. If you really so love, you're not trying to prove any point because you've had 2 biological children. So why don't you, if you love children, if you want more, instead of putting yourself at risk, why don't you adopt? And of course, it's a risky advice to give to someone because Ijeoma knows that if you're a pastor or if you're within, everybody thinks that when you give them such advice, you lack faith. I said, no, it has nothing to do. I'm just looking at how something that is realistic for you. I think it's risky at this time to keep pushing and pushing and trying to have a biological child. You wouldn't know what will happen tomorrow. You could get lucky 1 or 2 times and you have miscarriages and you are okay. And I can tell you, I don't know if your husband is pushing you, agreeing with you with this, but if you drop dead, I think it's your parents or your family members that would even encourage him to get married the next year so that he can have people to take care of the 2 kids you have. So when you were talking about women taking care of their health and all of that, I feel that this is also because I noticed the trend. I don't know the point that people are trying to prove. Some people at 50, 55, 56, it's okay if you want to do it, but it has a higher risk level. And I've seen people that have done that, and that began the decline in the health. They had hip problems and all of that, and they're not even healthy enough to take care of those children.
Dr. Berry, you are so on point because when I started studying on maternal mortality, I was in a state of shock. You know, many things you don't understand because you've had your kids. But when I started studying, and I did an extensive study on women's health, and I realized that it's not just about having a child, it's the after effect of having a child. Yeah. Childbearing has a great impact on a woman's body. Mm-hmm. It's not something to be taken very lightly. Mm-hmm. It's not something to think that is just, oh, I used to look at it, oh, she's pregnant, oh, she's had a child. Like Dr. Barrett said, 100%. We see a lot of health issues. That's why if you see in the definition of maternal death, it puts up to 42 days after. But if you look at the comprehensive definition of maternal death, up to 12 months post-delivery, whatever that happens to a woman within that window is also considered as maternal death. So it's very important for women to be that's why I said a woman has a right to choose to be pregnant. And the older you are risking your life, you're risking your health, you're risking your body, and you're risking your sustainability and your ability to to be an effective mother to that child. Because it's not just about having a child, it's about being able for that child to say, I did this with my mother, I did this with my father, I did this, I'm achieving my milestones, not a child being raised by caregivers and all that. So like you said rightfully, and she knows as ministers of God, sometimes when we say some things, people look at it in another way and say, oh, is it because you have two boys and a girl? You don't know what we are going through. And like I say, all we can do is to advise, give the information, let them know that these things are realities and these realities are real. And then it's up to them, whatever decision they take. I remember a time a lady called me some years back and she said her mouth was swollen, cut up. I was so angry. I drove my car how many miles? I'm going to take this girl out of this man's house. How dare you beat her up and blah, blah, blah. When I got to the house, she said, I fell from the step. I felt like a fool. I said, you what? I said, you did not fall from the step. And I turned to the husband. I said, I know this lady did not sustain this thing. You did something to her. But at the end of the day, she refused to leave that place. She had the Stockholm syndrome. So I had to go. So sometimes people that need help will not receive the help. But all we can do as caregivers, as people who are knowledgeable, people who have the information, is to leave the information there. You've done your part, and then let's take it from there. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ezinne. We have another question, and I need to make a correction on Gia. Gia is not from Suriname. She is from Trinidad and Tobago. But her question is, we wish to comment that all the issues raised here will be discussed in the upcoming Gender Equity Forum taking place in Paris, France this month. NRWPTT will be involved, where we will participate in the priority action areas, because locally we are working, whoops, I missed that, working with projects in the areas of gender-based violence, beginning with the youth, men, boys, girls, women, health matters, gender and the environment, poverty and gender, women and girls, and the science. So that's it. So she didn't have a question, but great information. Thank you, Gia.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And we have a message, a question from Damaris. Damaris asks us a question on what Dr. Ezinne stated, that there are so many unreported cases of many women who are in domestic violence. How can we bring these women to speak? How can they be brought out in the light to speak?
The first thing I always say is that when a woman goes through domestic violence, the first thing she experiences is shock. So she's sitting back in that position, thinking about, did this actually happen to me? Then after she has thought about, did it actually happen to me? Am I actually a victim of domestic violence? Until she gains that reality before she's able to take the next step. How is she able to gain that reality? When you and I let them know the signs, the symptoms, the things that surround domestic violence, when we give out that information. The first time a woman is hit, the first time a woman is being abused, she's like, no, it's not me. That can't happen to me. No. But the more she keeps listening, like I believe many of us that have listened today, you've gained one knowledge here or the other, or you've been affirmed something you already know. All over the world, people watching this, somebody is thinking, I've gone through this. I am going through this. I know someone that has gone through this. I know someone that needs to listen to this. I know someone that is going through gender-based violence. I know someone that is going through maternal ill health. I know someone that is going through depression and anxiety. Somebody may be listening to me. You now look back. I developed this illness after this situation, after that situation. You are able to draw the dots together. And all these come from information giving. That is why it's important for us to keep having seminars upon seminars, upon seminars, upon information, upon workshops. These workshops raise awareness. And as this awareness is being raised, people begin to make informed decisions. And these informed decisions include letting them know what to do, letting them know their escape opportunities. One of the things I see in low-income countries and middle-income countries is that they tell people, leave abuse without providing them with what can they do to leave. So many stay because they can't pay the children's school fees, they have no roof over their head, and they'll rather say, I'd rather stay here and die than go on the street and become a prostitute with my kids. Many times in Africa, when a woman leaves a man, they take the children from her. They take the children for her. She has no access to her children. And that is the start of depression, the start of anxiety. And many times they label the woman with, she's a witch, she's a this, she tried to poison me. There are so many name calling that they give that woman that makes her begin to think that I should rather have stayed in this abusive relationship than have to deal with the stigma of being a woman that left her husband, a woman that has no children, a woman that has no source of income. So all this, we need to create empowerment strategies before people to support people who want to live and provide information. If these things are put in place, more and more women are able to access these things. And then the men who are having those situations can also seek counseling, help, therapy to help them overcome whatever issues they're dealing with.
Thank you, Dr. Ezinne. Did that answer your question, Damaris?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ijeoma.
Does anyone else have any questions in the forum or on Facebook Live before we end? Okay. Again, I want to thank you, Dr. Ezinne, and I want to thank the listeners. Caroline, again, Caroline has, I love what she put, holding regular medical camps is in hand to reach communities is a great investment towards increasing access to quality healthcare services. And Dr. Dorcas, she says, let's work together and empower women. So we have, and routine medical health checks is not a standard practice in many homes around the world, from Dr. Caroline. So that is such good information. And thank you again so much for speaking. I mean, I learned so much today. And thank you for, representing females around the world, because as we all know, her right definition is freedom and equity worldwide, from freedom till death. So thank you so much. And thank everyone that came on, the platform, and those that watched. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Ezinne.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me any day.